The neon light of the massive billboard on the opposite platform had something hypnotic about them. The vivid colors of its message, "The word is yours," shifted constantly with the breathtaking landscape scrolling across, bathing the vast station in ever-changing moods, from blood-red hues to the clear blue of ancient seas. Just another one of those countless marketing campaigns for the great game, offering once a month, to one lucky winner, a villa and a fortune in the new world, up there in the stars, away from the cloud of pollution that now covered the old earth below. Tonight, Raymond Blake was alone on the platform. For once, he had left the office very late. Blame it on that stupid traffic jam this morning on 11th Avenue. One more poor sod who decided he'd rather throw themselves under the thrusters of a car rather than wait for their lungs and urine to slowly rot from the toxic air. And Raymond, who had arrived at work a full hour late. Of course, it had to happen today, of all days, when he already had a mountain of paperwork to complete. His job neither excited nor repulsed him. He had chosen it because it was a lifetime possession, for its stability and security, and for the air purifier in his room, provided by the company. But he still had to complete his tasks, and he had no choice but to remain seated long after all his colleagues had left. Sometimes, he wondered what was the point anymore. Then he shrugged, reminding himself that he lived a far better life than the vast majority of the few billion people still left in the world. And he went back to his paperwork. Once, long ago, he used to dream. He had dreamed of the new world, of its pure air, and all the wonders it promised. But he didn't even have the credit to pay for an entry into the great game, let alone to get there by his own means. So he had decided to stop dreaming. But the light of the billboard before him, the incredible views of a world he would never set foot in, the dancing, shifting colors through the thin haze of pollution, perhaps he wanted to dream again. And perhaps he even dozed off. Or perhaps not, but he was torn away from the swirling colors by the train pulling into the station. Strangely, it did not look like the usual trains. The cars were sleek and slender, striped with green, and its locomotive was a remarkable machine from another era. It came to a halt in front of Raymond, and he boarded a carriage, his gaze distant. Like the platform, the train seemed deserted, and it did not stop at any of the stations that usually made up its route, leaving the city behind and speeding far, far into the night. After a long while, the train begins to slow, and soon the light of a new station appears beyond the window. Raymond hesitates for a moment, as though something is not quite right, then shrugs and steps onto the checkered tiles of the platform. A few steps ahead, a golden spiral staircase raises upward, and Raymond begins to climb, a curious yet relaxed expression on his face. At the top, he pushes open a door and enters a large circular room, at the center of which stands a table, and around it, beneath the light of a crystal chandelier, neon lights, and the flames of torches illuminating the space, Raymond discovers three people, deep in conversation. "Huh, a new traveler passing through!" exclaims a tall bearded man in a brightly colored coat as he notices the newcomer. "Welcome among us!" Raymond nods and takes the empty seat between the other two guests. A tall blonde woman who looks as though she had stepped straight out of a ball, dressed in a blue satin gown with carefully styled hair, and an older lady with white hair pulled back, wearing a curious black and silver suit. "Welcome among us, traveler. What brings you here?" the latter asks Raymond, as the bearded man pours him a glass of wine. I'm not really sure," Raymond replies. Where exactly are we?" "You are at the harbor for the damned," answers the woman in blue in a clipped voice. "Is this your first time here?" "I believe so," Raymond says. "Then you must tell us your story," the bearded man shouts. "We don't have much time before we have to leave the harbor and our paths diverge again. So, why are you here?" I don't know. And you? Why are you here?" Raymond asks. "I first arrived here 6 years ago, in 1525, the bearded man replies. "My ship had run aground a deserted island after being caught up in a storm. Only a handful of us survived. A week later, we were down to 2, and had no choice but to feed on what we could. A few days after I found myself alone, I discovered the harbor for the first time. I was later fortunate enough to be rescued by a passing merchant vessel, but since that day, I return to the harbor whenever I need it. I wonder if we haven't met before, the older woman notes. Wasn't it you, once, telling how you lost your daughter in a fire? Indeed, madam, and I remember you as well. You did bear the guilt of your battalion's death, if I recall correctly. What brings you here today? Quite the same, more or less. Commander Yasna of the 7th Cassiopean Infantry Division, she adds for Raymond and the young woman's benefit. The year is 6581, and I have just sent 50 men and women to a certain but necessary death in order to gather intelligence on the invaders plundering our colonies. And you, Captain, what brings you here on this day? A revolt on my estate, in my plantations, the bearded man replies. About 100 slaves set fire to the granary before fleeing last night. It will take us years to recover from our losses. I sympathize, the woman in blue comments, with an indignant pout. Raymond nods, surprised to feel compassion for the man as well. Under normal circumstances, he would likely celebrate those men and women breaking their chains and rising against such a barbaric system. But here, things are different. At the harbor for the damned, only the stories and their sincerity matter. And what about you, young lady? Commander Yasna asks. To what do we owe the pleasure of your charming company? The blonde woman takes a sip of wine before answering, a haughty expression on her face. 2 of my suitors just fought a duel for my hand, and my favorite lost. I rejected the victor's advances, but he did not take it well. As a revenge, he took my maid with him. We found her body this morning, and you do not want to know what she has gone through. My father's men-at-arms will seek vengeance, but they will return empty-handed. I know it. He has already retreated behind his walls, and my dear Ilya and my handsome Horace are no more. Silence settles for a few moments. Then, the guests offer their condolences and sympathy. And how did you first find this place? Raymond asks, intrigued. Oh, it was so long ago, in 1804, if I remember correctly. I just had my first flowers, and my brothers called me a monster. Oh, a rather insignificant story to me now, but at the time, it did lead me here. Only then does Raymond realize that none of his 3 companions speak English, as he does, except perhaps for the woman in blue. Oh well, he quickly forgets that detail as she turns her piercing gaze towards him. And what about our newcomer? What brings you among us today? She asks. Raymond frowns. He thinks for a moment, and then replies, I don't dream anymore. Ah, sighs the captain. I am very sorry to hear that. Indeed, that is quite tragic, the old commander agrees. The young blonde woman gives him her characteristic pout once more and takes another sip of wine. Not knowing what to do with his hands, Raymond imitates her. Ah, it's almost time, the captain suddenly exclaims, checking his pocket watch. Our time is nearly up. Already? Raymond asks, in surprise. Oh, yes, the captain chuckles. It's always the same with newcomers. First time always feel like this. But don't worry, it will get better. He is right, the commander adds. You'll learn to grasp and bend the time you spend here as you return. For now, it is time to leave the harbor. Perhaps we will meet again someday, the woman in blue simply says as she stands, giving them a brief nod. Perhaps, the captain echoes, rising as well. Safe travels to you all, and keep your heads high. Then, one by one, they all leave the room. Alone once again, Raymond walks down the long dark corridor, at the end of which a light and colors grow ever more brilliant as he moves forward. And soon, the message becomes perfectly clear. The word is yours. The train pulls into the station, and Raymond stirs, coming back to the present just in time to board it. He briefly wonders if he has dozed off, because as far as he remembers, the train was not due for another half hour at least. Strange. It almost feels like he had been dreaming.